Hello everyone, I'm Kai. Today's presentation is about the Firebase. I'm going to share with you about what I've learned for the second stage. So let's get started. First, this is today's agenda. So I'm going to go through the cloud storage, cloud messages, and I will focus on the cloud function and emulator. Then I'll talk about the hosting. That's basically a whole process of Firebase. Okay, so what is cloud storage? Cloud storage is a platform that's provided by Firebase for developers to store and serve user-generated content. Usually they are photos and videos. And then the advantage of using it is powerful, it's simple, and cost-effective. The Firebase SDK for cloud storage added Google security to file uploads and downloads for Firebase apps, regardless network quality. This means the downloads and uploads are robust, meaning that they restart where they stopped it, saving your user's time and bandwidth. In summary, Google Cloud Storage provides you ability to upload and download files and a place for you to store those files. And imagine if you are a developer and you want to develop this storage function yourself, you need to consider a lot of situations such as like network quality or when interrupts happens, like how do you handle them, and about the security, and all of these things that Google has considered for you, and all you need to do is you can just directly using them. The implementation path for the cloud storage is quite straightforward, though. The first you just need to integrate with the Firebase SDK for the cloud storage, and then you create a reference. Usually define a path that where do you save your files. In my case, I just generate a random random key as my path name to upload. For the download, you need to remember the path, and you can download or delete. And then depends on your needs, you can upload or download. The final step is secure your files. So you can use security rules to define who can access the files, who cannot access the file. Okay, let's talk about the cloud messaging. Cloud messaging is also called FCM, Firebase Cloud Messaging, as its name. It's used for messaging. There are two types of messages that Firebase can do. First is called notification messages, which is messages that display to your user about what's going on of your program. Another type of messages is called data messages, and this is completely determined by your application code. So you can define your own logic. There are three distribution ways. First is you can distribute it to a single device, or you can distribute to a group of devices, or you can to devices that subscribe to the topics. So you can define your topics and define which device is subscribed to that topic, and only distribute to that group. So it also can send messages from client apps. So it's in a reverse way. So for example, you can send an acknowledgement. For example, if it's a chart program, I can send the acknowledgement of I read this message. So it's from the client side to the server. The implementation path for the Firebase is quite simple. First, you need to set up the FCM SDK in the I use npm. So it's just a command. Then you need to just develop the client app, which is define the messaging handling logic. Now I'm going to show you a quick video about how the cloud messaging work. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to send a sign-in welcome message for the first time signed in users, and if a user send a message in the chat, everyone else will get a notification who sent what. Okay, so first, in order to do it, I need to go to my authentication, delete my account first because I want to be a new user. So delete my account. Yeah, so now if I sign in as my account Kai Huang, I'm a new user. Yeah, so could you do that? Okay, so first we see a message pop up, and then on the bottom right corner is a notification pop up. Says Kai Huang sign in for the first time, welcome. And if I send a message in the chat, I get another message, including my avatars actually. So shows what message I sent, so everybody else will get this notification. So this bottom left, this box is Google Chrome notification system, and this is called notification. Actually, this message is not done by the cloud messaging. It's actually done by the cloud functions. I will talk about this later. But as you can see, with this cloud messaging system, it's very good. It's very convenient for users. Okay, so now let's talk about the cloud functions. I did spend a lot of times on these cloud functions because it's a quite important part in the Firebase, and it can implement a lot of things with the cloud functions. So we all know a professional web application does need a front end and a back end. We cannot run every code on the user's device, which means front end. So sometimes we do need a back end to help us to handle some things. Firebase is a serverless framework. So unlike the traditional way of writing backend code, cloud functions, it's a new way for Firebase that you can run your backend code. So the backend events can be triggered by the Firebase features, such as the authentication or the cloud storage or the cloud messaging, or all those features, and also can be triggered by the traditional way HTTPS request. Require include the get, post, delete, and put. And the language it use is JavaScript or TypeScript, and it's stored in the Google Cloud, and it runs in a management environment. What does it mean? So it means that you can use npm to create an environment, developing environment, and you can write your code and debug on your local device, and through a command that you can one command to push your code to the cloud, Google's cloud, and then be production or staging. And that means that you don't need to manage and scale your own servers. Using cloud, that's an advantage of using cloud. And even better is you don't need to worry about a backend framework, that you just cloud functions, write functions as backend. Now let's take a look at the key features of the cloud functions. First, as I mentioned it before, we can use JavaScript or TypeScript in the Node.js environment to develop. And second, it's easy to deploy. Usually it's one command deploy on the Google server, and it's serverless. Third, it's zero maintenance, right? Google handles everything. You don't need, you just worry about, focus on the user logic, focus on every single function. Fourth, it's integrated with Firebase platform, so you can use some other Google services such as analytics, Questionlytics, file store, storage, and etc. And it's private and secure. Okay, so now let's take a look at some examples that cloud functions can do. First, it can notify users when something interesting happens. So when something interesting happens, you can define to use cloud messaging to notify one users, or notify a group of users, or notify all users. Define the logic for notify users. Second is it can perform a database sanitizing and maintenance. On the official website, I give an example is when people upload, for example, a chart message. It contains some keywords. It can be do a screening and delete those messages. So it's like before you want to save something into the database, you can perform your action in the backend, because in the front end it's not secure. People may change it or something to try to skip, but in the backend it's directly before you save into database, it's secure, and a lot of things that you can do at that moment. Third is execute intensive tasks in the cloud instead of in your app. That's why we have backend and front end. Although nowadays the browsers it becomes more and more powerful, but we still some intensive tasks that the browser can't handle. So we need a powerful server to handle, which Google provides. The service Google provides, and we put those intensive tasks in the cloud instead of in your app. The fourth one is integrated with some third-party services and API. It's the same like the second one. It's like something you don't want to put in the front end, the user's device, to do it, because it contains some tokens, some keys. So it's more secure to put in the backend, and that's why you write in the cloud functions. Okay, so now let's take a look at the implementation path for the cloud functions. First, you need to set up the cloud functions, which is by installing the Firebase CLI by calling the npm-g install Firebase-tools, and you can log in, Firebase login, and Firebase add. I think it's Firebase use --add to choose like which project in the Firebase console that you want to link with the front end. And then you need to initialize the cloud functions in your Firebase project. Let me show you an example. Is here we go. Yeah, so this is you need to include the Firebase functions, as well as you need to import the Firebase admin. Okay, so as you can see here, what I highlighted is an example of cloud functions. The name of the cloud function is called stand notifications, and then this defines what triggers the cloud functions. In this case, is it will detect in the cloud file store under these paths, messages, and then messages ID. If a new messages be inserted, it will run the code in the cloud functions. This is the content of the cloud functions. Okay, so now let's back to the slides. The next one is the test functions. We use local emulator to test. So what is emulator? It's basically mimic the server environment on your local device, so that you don't need to deploy every time, and it also provides you debug functions. It's quite useful. And so the final step is deploy and monitor. It's very easy to deploy. You just need one command. It's called Firebase deploy only functions, that only deploy the functions to the server, and it provides the monitor functions I'm going to show you here. Okay, so as you can see here, this is my function console, and this is two functions that I have. One's add a welcome message, and another one send notifications. And if I open the log, it will show you a logs like when and who and what event triggered it, and does it successful or not, did it run successful or not. As you can see, like, yeah, this is today's history. So and also I remember that it also give you, it's similar like a GitHub. It's give you a history of these function, like what content you changed every time you deploy, like what's the difference. So it's quite useful, and this is a place you track and see the reports. Okay, so now it comes to the final step, hosting. So with cloud hosting, that you can deliver content very fast in just one command, and it's secure, and it can host a static and dynamic content and the microservices. So the implementation path for the hosting is So yeah, first you need to install the CUI and then set up your project directory and test, write your code, test, share your changes before going live, and then you can deploy just one command, just Firebase deploy except functions, because we usually deploy the functions separately. We deploy functions like using Firebase deploy dash dash only functions to deploy functions, and here we deploy anything else other than functions. And then you can link to a Firebase web app, but this is option. Okay, so after you call the deploy command, it will deploy to Firebase server, and I will give you a temporary hosting URL. This URL actually is public, so everybody can access it. If you have a domain name, you also can link with it. Now I'd like to talk about my project, which has been using by my self-testing every weekend. And I do encounter some difficulty because I choose to use Vue.js as my front end, but most documentation that on the official website is just a pure HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. It doesn't use the Vue.js. When I search Vue.js and Firebase, I can find some forum and some article, but not as much as the pure HTML. Like when I try to implement some functions like cloud functions and cloud messaging, I do have some difficulty to implement it. But I do find that real database is very easy to use and it's powerful, and the game can be played now, and the URL is on the screen. Okay, so this is how my project looks like. Sorry that I don't have enough time to do the UI. In the future, I'll make it looks good. So this is an index page. So after you go to this URL, you will see a room list, and then if you can just pick any room that it's empty, as long as it's empty, and then you can put your name. And then here you can see that room 14 is waiting for player, so another player can join in and it will show the notification player joined the game, and the player 2 can put his name. And okay, so now you can start it. Player 2 can't put any move because the player 1 is first. So player 1 go, and player 2 can see its move, and player 2 can play. That's it. That's pretty much it. So these features basically all built in by the real-time database, which is quite powerful, because if I use a traditional database, I need to I need to let the user to refresh. So a lot of code need to be implement this feature. But if I use the real-time database, it's very convenient. I can do a very short time, which is awesome. But as you can see here, I have a lot of features that I'm not finished, such as this authentication. So what I'm going to do with the cloud functions and cloud messaging is I want to do authentication function first. If a user logged in, which means this user is online, and it will notify all other registered user that this user is online, and so that you can go and play with the these features that I'm going to do next step. But because of the some difficulty in the Vue.js integrated with Firebase, so I haven't found a way that to implement this. But yeah, I will do a self-reflection about the self-testing result and what I've learned from it. But I mean, this again, the main person that's main of the game is working, so you can invite some friends, or you can just open 2 tabs to play. And if you find any issues, please let me know, and it would be appreciated. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. So hopefully you enjoyed my videos, and you can learn something, and you want to learn the Firebase in the future. Please feel free to contact with me, and we can discuss.